Now relax, be happy, and I have a lot of things to tell to you, but I would like to do something a little bit different because we have three very interesting talks today which explain already to you the physical basis of collapse. And as you noted, Inigo already showed you curves very similar to this one, which is the Seneca curve. So I would like to spend maybe 20 minutes to discuss essentially who are we, what we are doing here, where we come from, and where we are going. And I will start with a man who lived about 2,000 years ago, Lucius Annaeus Seneca, who had this idea that perhaps I overemphasized a little, but because he left us a huge corpus of literature. But he said in one letter to a friend, that, I noticed this, that increases sluggish growth, but the way to ruin is rapid. If you like, I can tell you it in Latin. Would you like? Incrementa lente exeunt, sed festinantur in damnum. Do you Hungarians understand Latin? Well, it's difficult also for Italians. Seneca's Latin is very beautiful, but a bit difficult. Anyway, I would like now, seriously, to take you to follow a path which has already been followed by our ancestors during the times of the Roman Empire. So why did Seneca came out with this idea? How relevant is it for us? And what we can learn from the experience of those people who lived several centuries before us. Seneca was seeing a world very similar to the world we are seeing now. Because as you know, the Roman Empire went through a whole cycle of growth and then ruin, collapse. It collapsed around the 5th century of our era. So when Seneca was expressing this thought, he never said, never was a catastrophist. You could go through his work and he never said, oh, the empire is going to collapse. But he knew, he understood that there were problems. You can find the same attitude with other writers of the time, Tacitus, Suetonius, others. They perceived there was something wrong. The empire is so powerful, so rich, so invincible, so glorious, but that something is wrong. And Seneca had an attitude similar to ours. Try to speak to the ear of the king, or the emperor, or the leader of the marquise, as you said. Seneca tried to control the actions of Emperor Nero, who was his pupil. And as a result, Nero ordered him to commit suicide. So be careful of what you say. And that's one first problem, because you see, this is a long story that goes through. Seneca failed to convince the emperors that there was a problem. The problem was there. A whole movement called the Stoics understood that there was a problem that they misunderstood. They thought it was a problem of virtue of the Roman citizens. They tried to restore the virtue, but that didn't work really so well. So there was at some moment a group of subversive that came up around the 2nd century AD, revolutionary, subversive, bad people, madmen, the Christians. People who wanted to change the system. Also, that was very dangerous, because if you do it wrong, the system will not be happy. So what happens during the centuries, you go all the way to the mid-4th century, and then you had the equivalent of the current MAGA. So some sort like Trump came, because the Christians had become obnoxious, noisy, and nobody wanted them, and said, so we restore the Roman Empire to its former glory. And there comes an emperor, two emperors, actually. One was Decius, the other Valentinian. And Valentinian, let's say about him, he said, okay, you want to be a good Roman citizen? You have compulsory sign on a paper that you performed the ritual sacrifices to the emperor. Not so big, it's not so much. You just go there, burn some, kill a chicken or something like that, and then you sign. You have a libellum, a waxed tablet, a green certificate actually, and it's easy. Why don't you want to do it? And the Christians mostly refused to do that. There was a big clash. Several prominent Christians were killed because they refused. No green ceram, no libellum, and so you have to die. Cyprianus, you may have heard the name, Saint Cyprian, he refused, and was the big clash between the MAGA people, let's make the empire great again, and those subversive Christians. But you know, the empire was doing exactly the opposite of what the Christians wanted to do. So be careful what you try to obtain. And then eventually Emperor Valentinian, he said, now I will get the empire strong again. He attacked the Persian Empire, took the legions all the way to Asia, was defeated by Emperor Shapur II, and according to the legend, he was forced to act as a stool for the emperor when he climbed on his horse. You see what MAGA can do. It's, we don't know what could happen if you think you can restore everything the way it was before. And it took time and much struggle until in 435, finally, not an emperor, but an empress, Galla Placidia, the first and last emperor of the Western Empire, she produced an edict, which was called the Digna Vox. Beautiful, not so well known, but it is still the basis of our legal system. Galla Placidia, in the name of his son, because you could not be an empress at that time, you had an emperor, but his son, Valentinian II, was about 6 years old when, so I said, it is our wish as emperors to obey the law, which was a profoundly Christian idea, because the emperors thought they were the law. And so it took a few centuries to convince the emperors that they had to obey the law as all citizens. And then the empire faded forever, becoming Middle Ages. The Middle Ages were a solution for the problems of the Roman Empire. It was obvious, and it happened. It happened because it had to happen. There was no plan, no conviction, no things that you could do to take the empire where it wanted to go. Eventually, the empire, the Roman Empire, had to become the Middle Ages, and it did. But after so much struggle, so much violence, so much suffering, and so much loss of life. Okay. So you have to be careful, because what you are doing now is something similar to the ancient Christians. We try to reform the system, to tell the emperors to do what you think should be done, but the emperors do not agree. In a certain sense, Trump is the result of something that we, people like us, said and did. Let me give you a more recent example. I started my career as a collapsologist, as Bolosh told me I didn't know before, but I know now that I am a collapsologist. Not for nothing, I go around keeping a bow and arrows just in case, you don't know what happens. And on my bag, I have a tinderbox to light fire. You never know what this thing can be. But I started my career back in 2001 when I witnessed, I was in the United States at that time, I witnessed the fall of the towers. It's a sign from the sky. And I started with an association which was called ASPO, Association for the Study of Peak Oil, which was a smaller version of what we're doing now. we had our own Seneca curve, and we thought that oil depletion was the main problem we had. It was a subset of the problem. Now we know there are many more problems, depletion of more mineral resources, climate change, pollution, overpopulation. But at that time, we tried to focus on that. And that was an attempt. We said, we speak to the people, we speak to the emperor, and we convince them that we have to do something to counter, to adapt to oil depletion, because that's a problem that we saw. You saw in Ugo's diagrams that those curves, this curve, this is working also for oil. At that time, we thought that oil was the main problem, and ASPO was very active for about a decade, 10 years. Then it sort of disappeared, but didn't disappear. It merged into the wider view of the problem, like limits to growth, pollution, etc. And then the question is, what did we obtain? Did we obtain anything? No. Unfortunately, no. Actually, we got exactly the reverse of what we were claiming. Now, this is a very important point. I invite you to think about that, because we were telling the emperor we have to reduce oil consumption. What did the emperor do, Mr. Bush Jr.? He invaded Iraq because of the oil. There is a legend which says that George Bush Jr. decided to attack Iraq because he had read something written by ASPO. I cannot know if it is true. Maybe it could be. I do not discount this possibility, because, you know, people decide, most of us do it, because of a blob of ideas that we have in our mind. We don't use, except maybe for an ego, but most of us don't use models. I don't, for decisions. We think of things, we have some mimetic thing that coalesces in, so we have to invade Iraq. Why? Nobody knows. We had to invade in Afghanistan. You know why Afghanistan was invaded? You know, it was because of helping the Afghan women to wear lipstick, right? It was for that. No, it was because some oil geologists in the 1990s went near the Caspian Sea, made a survey, and returned with some numbers which were already exaggerated. Going through, as Andrea showed, going through the diagram, these numbers, which were already wrong, became even more exaggerated, and then the Caspian Sea resources became the new Saudi Arabia, 300 billion barrels. At that point, somebody started thinking, and they said it, you can find it in the proceedings of the US Senate, we need to create a way to access these resources. That meant Afghanistan. So you go, start a war, 20 years of war. Where are these resources? They don't exist. Where they exist, maybe there are 50 billion, not 300 billion, 50 billion, very difficult to extract. It's a story you can learn if you learn something about oil, which is a very complicated story, but not. You see how many things connect with each other. So what happened with ASPO is that we obtain exactly the opposite results that we wanted to obtain, because apart from Afghanistan, apart from Iraq, the American economic system, the financial system, probably, on this I'm reasonably sure, influenced by ideas such as peak oil, they set up to falsify, to go exactly in the opposite direction. You don't want to go to the natural laws which say, okay, look, oil is exhaustible. You want to go the other way. That's a very nice drawing you made, and show that the people of the United States are more powerful than nature. And so that was the start of what's called tight oil or shale oil. You may have heard of that. Did you? You know what is shale oil? Shale oil is the result of an enormous financial effort of the American economy, not a single person, the economy, because this strange entity probably influenced, say, if oil is scarce, then if I invest in oil, I will make money. And so they invested a huge amount of money, bringing back production in the United States to the levels of 30 years before. The United States had gone through the peak and was declining, and then it would go up and go up and go up and go up, still going up for a while. So you, I repeat, should be very careful of what you ask for, because it may happen, and it often happens, that you get the exact opposite, because that's the way the system works. I still have 9 minutes, and, and I thought I had a lot of slides here. A lot of slides which show you examples and curves and Shakespeare and perfect storms. But you see, this is the, I'm not going to show you any more curves. My colleagues already showed you curves. But let me just tell you that one characteristic of complex systems in which we live, every one of us is a complex system in itself, himself or herself, is an example of a perfect storm. As Shakespeare said, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but battalions. Shakespeare was a smart guy. He understood. He was not a physicist. He didn't work with models. He didn't write equations, but he was right. And you have things and things and things and things and things and things. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. You can play with models as much as you like, but you see what can happen. For instance, this is relatively recent. The Irish population, 1845. Mr. Bridget, where are you? Here. You know this, right? This is Ireland lost half of its population in a few years. It happened. It can happen. Depends on the time scale. And these are the latest results of models. If you like to have models, you can have models. And this is the latest implementation of the limits to growth model. You see, it is Seneca. It is a Seneca curve. It produces Seneca curves. And you see the population is here. This is the production. Somewhere here there is Trump. Donald Trump is here. And I tell you, you have to be careful. This is the book I'm writing, not yet available, but working on that. Let's say that if we are careful, and if we follow these curves, things may not be so bad. Could be worse. Because you see, there is a certain logic in the universe. The universe is fractal. You may have heard of the sand pile model. See, the universe is a huge sand pile. It grows, and sometimes collapses. Sometimes it grows, sometimes it collapses. And you can make a mathematical model of this thing, and this is the universe as a pulse. The universe, we are worried about collapse because we work on a time scale which is very short. Our life. But on a longer time scale, like for instance, from the whole Phanerozoic, you see that the universe follows these laws. And this is a very interesting point for climatologists. You see, people say CO2 is not so important because it is such a small amount. But if you take the ratio with oxygen, then you see that we are changing the system deeply, even with such a small amount. This is what I'm working on. It is one of those things that make you think and worry, because we are doing horrible things, as Derek said, with Derek, wherever he is. We are doing really horrible things to the system, and we are going back to the ratio which was some 30 million years ago. 30 million years ago, there were no human beings on this planet. It's not obvious that there will be human beings on this planet after. We keep growing with this CO2, and you see, we are doing things to the system rather than making models. I like to make measurements. We can measure CO2 concentration in this room. 1 second, it takes 20 seconds to be set. 16, 15, 14, just 1 moment. Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We are, see, beep, beep, we are over the limit. We should open the windows, because with 1,200 parts per million is known. Okay, the lady there understood immediately. It's bad. It is. You already notice a slowdown of your cognitive process at 600, but up to 1,000, it won't do any damage. But over right now to 1,200, it's something that it alerts you, and these values, we're going in that direction. So it's not just climate change. CO2 is a poison, and will poison you if you keep going the way we're going. We're already thinking about getting 800, 900, 1,000, and if outside there are maybe 500 and 1,300 inside, it means that in the future there will be 1,000 outside and 2,000 inside, and that could be bad. But anyway, I finish here. Don't worry too much. There is time. There are returns to go. We are going somewhere, and we will return. It's just a question of taking the right time scale. If you like, you can take a look at my blogs, which I discuss these things. And to finish, I would like to repeat my caution. Be careful to what you ask for, because if you examine carefully the consequences of what we have been saying, and you, Inigo, said, you, Andras, said, you, Derek, said, think about what is the conclusion. If it went through the mind of a politician, we are all good people, but think, what will a politician say? He will do exactly the opposite of what you are telling him to do. And you may be interested. I won't say you exactly what, but I just show you the cover of my book. And I think you understand what I mean when I say that a politician could understand your models, our models, in this way, for the need of something like this. I'm serious. I'm worried about that. Very worrisome. You know, our politicians have no moral restraint, just like the Roman emperors of long ago, and we don't have the equivalent of a Christian force that could tell them you have to obey the law like everybody else. Anyway, to finish, I would like to gift Bosch with this book. And thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks so much.